I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, a member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome to Thursday, July 28th, 2016. We're over the hump, more than halfway through. I hope it's all going well for everyone. As always, the best way to get in contact with me is to head over to my website at www.therebelbroker.com. You can click the link in the upper right-hand corner where it says Contact the Rebel Broker. And you can send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions that might be rattling around up in your head that you'd like me to consider, and I'll be happy to give my feedback for what it's worth. And while you're there, why not click the big red button at the top of the site? Support the show by taking a quick demographic survey to help get a handle on the makeup of my audience. It would go a long way towards helping me move the show forward so that I'm able to offer more in the show, kind of get some different content, offer some new things I'd love to integrate into the show that require just the investment of more time. And in order to do that, I kind of need to move forward with different growth ideas in terms of marketing the show and advertising the show, that type of stuff. And your participation by giving me an idea of the demographic makeup of my audience would be a huge help. So thanks for doing that. Oh, I hope you guys are having a good week. This one is feeling like a long one, and I'm having a hard time pinning down exactly why. I don't know if it's the phases of the moon or what, but man, I woke up Monday morning thinking, boy, it's got to be Friday. So I really have no excuse. I'd love to say I've been working hard, but it's been a relatively easy week, so I really have no reason to complain. I thought it might be nice. This is one that came across my desk a couple of days ago, actually. An article on things that you should know about home inspections. And I thought we'd cover it. We'd see what they say. Maybe sprinkle a little bit of magic Rebel Broker dust over it, and get a little bit more info into the mix as well. But I thought it'd be a good opportunity for us to sort of review what they are, who does them, why do you do them, and then I thought I'd give you some suggestions on whether or not on how you should do them, how you should handle them in your transaction if you're doing them. So let's start off generally with what a home inspection is. Now, it's a general inspection, so it's not designed to specifically call out, say, specific electrical problems or specific plumbing problems or those types of things. It is what it says it is. It's a home inspection. And someone's going to walk through, kind of check the whole place and see if they can see any problems. And so clearly anything that's hidden in the walls is not likely to be revealed by a home inspection. My home inspectors that I use do climb into the attic space, and they will crawl under the house and take a look. Usually, if me speaking as a buyer for a home I would move into to live in, as a buyer for an investment property, I would get a termite inspection and a home inspection regardless of whether they're required. A home inspection is almost never required by law, at least in where I am. That may not be true in your state. But a termite inspection is, I have yet to see where it's not required if you're getting financing. If you're not getting financing, if you're just paying cash, you could literally just walk up, give them the contract, hand over the cash, work it through the escrow, and you're done without ever doing any inspections. Not what I would do, not the smartest way to buy a property, but hey, it's an option for you if you want to do that. Your home inspection is an opportunity for you to figure out two levels of things, right? And I think this is something that's important to understand. And then, it's also true of the termite inspection, is to sort of separate things into two piles. One are things that are going to have to get done prior to close of escrow or that are going to have to be paid for by the seller, which may or may not get done before close of escrow, and things that are more advisory, things that they'll tell you, but you don't have a reasonable expectation that the other party would pay for it. Depending on the situation, those things that fall into that pile of may or may not ask for is really going to be a negotiation thing, because here's typically how this works. You make an offer on a home, and you are given a window of time to do your due diligence, to do your inspections. In that time, you're expected to get a home inspection, a termite inspection, roof inspection, electrical inspection, foundation inspection, whatever. If you're buying land, you're expected to go out there and if you feel it's necessary, get a survey done, all kinds of different things, right? So you get this window of time. Normally in my world, it's 2 weeks. Normally, that's not a problem. Sometimes, and it's also good to be calibrated to this beforehand. I will often, and this is something, I don't know many agents that do this. If I'm about to write an offer, I schedule the inspections before I've actually submitted the offer. Here's why I do that. If I call my preferred vendor for getting an inspection, and they tell me, well, you know what, we can't get anyone out there for 2 weeks, well, I want to know that, right? Because if I can schedule the things I know I want to get done, and I can get it done all real quick, and I know I'm going to be in escrow on this property within, say, 4 or 5 days, I'll just schedule something that's, say, 3 or 4 days beyond that, so that I know I've got a date set. It's super easy to cancel a date, right? You make an appointment to have it happen on a certain day. If your offer doesn't get accepted, fine. But this is something I do usually behind the scenes. I don't even usually tell my clients. I usually just schedule it, and then we work through it. What stinks is the scenario where you make your offer, you don't bother to make any reservations with anybody, any appointments with anyone, until after the offer is accepted. You pick up the phone, and you are shocked to realize, well, gosh, you know what? We're kind of at the peak of when folks are doing this stuff, so I can't get in there for a week and a half, which basically would mean that anything I discover, I only have a couple of days left for me to figure out what my plan is. And in this business, time and room to consider options is priceless. So I'm going to suggest that when you call your realtor, or if you write up your offer, however you're doing it, and you happen to be in the buyer's seat in this occasion, if there isn't already an existing home inspection that you can use, or you don't want to use the one that exists, and we can talk about that in a minute as well, that when you talk to your agent, you tell them, let's make an offer, here's what we're going to do, write up the contracts, and then at the same time tell them, please make appointments for times that would be appropriate for the home inspection to get done. And if you're getting financing, to do the termite inspection. The guy I happen to use does all of it, right? So usually with one phone call, I get termite, home, and roof. And I get roof because when I get home and termite with this particular company, they'll do a roof inspection for free. So that's your agent may know local vendors that kind of do the same thing. I'm sure they'll have some sort of in. This is something agents do all the time for just about every deal. So this shouldn't be a surprise to them that you may ask for this to happen. But I would just suggest you do it so that that's a duck that's lined up, and that if you do discover you can't get these inspections done within the time limit specified in your contract, you don't have to come back and ask them for an extension to that. You can you can say, we're so on top of this, we're so hot to buy your house, we've already made appointments to get inspections done. Okay? Now, the other thing you're going to want to keep in mind is that inspections may already be done when you go in to look at a house. I know that in the case of most properties that I list, not all, that I usually will get a home inspection done ahead of time. Not because I want to do anyone any favors necessarily, in terms of, because it's not always the cheapest thing to do. Depending on the size of the home, a home inspection can range in price from $300 to $800. But I want it to be a known thing. So if you're selling your house, I suggest you get a home inspection so that you are aware of the things that are going to get revealed, because the bottom line is your buyer is going to do it. So if you're going to list your home, better to list it knowing what the issues are rather than listing it not knowing and then discovering there's a $20,000 something that has to happen. By doing it ahead of time, it gives you time to consider your options and mitigate the issues and potentially mitigate them in a way where, since you've got more time to deal with it because you don't have an offer in hand, you're able to do it in a way that might be financially better for you. It might be cheaper for you to get the work done. Now, if you find things that you think you shouldn't have to pay for anyway, you list the home based on what you think the reasonable price is, and you give them the home inspection report and say the seller is not willing to remedy any of the issues mentioned in the home inspection. Now, of course, one thing that you'll note in a home inspection, at least the ones I get, it can be a source of future investigations. And by that, I mean, typically when I have a home inspector come out and check out a property, they're going to do the cool little thing where they check that the plugs are grounded with that little plug that they stick in, and the right light comes on or doesn't come on, and that way they know that a grounded plug is really grounded. They check the oven, they check the cooktop, they check the water flow, they check that the toilet's flush, they check that things aren't leaking. They're looking for all this different stuff. They'll open up the electrical box and just look at it. But what they might do in this is say, plug in second bedroom does not appear to be grounded despite being a grounded outlet. Water flow in bathroom 2 is lower than the rest of the house. These are things you may want to know about ahead of time if you're a seller, and you absolutely want to know about them if you're a buyer, because it may be something that is large enough for you to decide that you need to bring in another inspector who's a specialist in that area. Now, one thing that I find profoundly useful in a home inspection is when they do go to the trouble of crawling under the house and looking in the crawl space above, because they're also going to call out things like evidence of previous water leaks or evidence that there are cracks in the foundation that are worrisome. One of the biggest things that absolutely throws a red flag in front of my eyes is whenever a home inspector calls out foundation-related issues and suggests that you have an expert in that area come and do a follow-up inspection. The last thing you want to screw with is a house that has huge foundation-related issues. And so those are the things that would be ridiculously expensive to deal with. If we find any hint of a problem like that during the home inspection process, you want to call in an expert on those. Okay, so that's just right off the bat. We haven't even broached the issues or the things that you should know about home inspections yet, according to this article. I've just sort of gone through, giving you an idea of what it is, what part it might play in your transaction. Now, one other thing I'd want to bring up before we get into their list is, what do you do when you're a buyer and they already have a home inspection done? Well, I'll be honest, there's no real pat answer. For me, if it's a home inspection organization I've never heard of, and if when I look at it, I don't see anything, and given the age of the home, it would be reasonable for there to be something, or if I see issues called out within the report, but there's no photos of the issue, those are all indicators to me that this may not have been a very thorough report, or it may have been done by someone who isn't particularly adept at doing this stuff. And I've been at this long enough where I'll usually at least recognize the name of a company that does this stuff. So if I come up against one that's totally a no-name company to me that I've never seen before, then I am probably going to suggest to my clients that they get their own home inspection. If your agent is less in that kind of ballpark, right? I know there's plenty of agents out there who just say, hey, take the inspection for what it is and just move on. We just saved you X hundreds of dollars. Now you don't have to do one because they did it. And that may very well be true. And if you talk to your agent and you say, well, what are you basing that on? They'll say, well, I know this company. I've worked with it before. I even know this inspector. That's great. They are now a payoff for you. They have suddenly saved you money because that agent already knows the reputation of this inspector, and you're good to go. So move forward, pass go, collect your $200. Great. You don't have to pay for a home inspection. Normally, you may have, as I mentioned, you have a termite inspection. Normally, that's not something that the seller tends to do, but it's in most areas, if I'm speaking more broadly now. But what's really interesting is in some regions, it really tends to get done before the home even lists, for a lot of the same reasons a home inspection gets done, just so you know exactly what the situation is. I know that for some of my properties, now see, if you're listing your home, you're going to want to think about this. There are some circumstances where it doesn't make sense for you to do certain inspections. Let me give you an example. Condominiums. I recently sold a condominium that was legally a condominium, but architecturally it was a townhouse, meaning it was, you walked up to the front door, it was on a ground floor, it had a floor above it, and it only shared two walls to the left and to the right, right? So that's more of a townhouse feel, but organized as a condo. There's no reason in the world for us to pay for a home inspection and a roof inspection, because it just didn't make any sense. There wasn't enough going on there that would be an issue for the seller. So in other words, we don't need to worry about the roof because it's a condo, and the condo association would deal with the roof. We don't need to do a home inspection primarily because of the age and in generally looking at it, I did not see any reason to be concerned about that. My experience told me we didn't need to go to that expense. If a buyer wants to go to that expense under that situation, fantastic. You need to decide if you trust the instincts of your real estate agent. A lot of real estate agents simply say, do it. They have it on their checklist, and without thinking it through on your circumstances, they'll simply say, do it every time. Well, in this case, I was trying to save my client some money. I didn't see it as being an obstacle to getting the home sold, so we didn't do it. It didn't make any sense. Buyers came in and had both things done because they were getting a loan, so they got a termite inspection, plus they got a home inspection, and everything went exactly as I expected. There were two things found, but neither one of them was the responsibility of the seller. They were responsibility of the HOA. So boom, we're good. Okay. So think through it a little bit, and I think that ended up saving my folks, I think, $600. So it was a charge that they didn't have to worry about paying for. So compare it to your circumstances, what your situation is, to figure out what makes sense for you in that particular situation. But you'll never go into a situation where you just take someone's word for it. You always want a document that's giving you some insights into the state of the property. If it's a property and one question you're going to need to answer is, what is being inspected? Because a lot of times folks don't realize this. You feel like, okay, I'm paying for a home inspection. The property is being inspected. If there's a deck outside attached to the home, make sure and mention you want that included. If there is a small outbuilding or some other outbuilding, make sure to mention you want that included. Your agent, your representative should be there for the inspection. And the way inspections work now, this should not be a long, drawn-out process. If I get an inspection done earlier in the day, 9 times out of 10, I've got a PDF of that report with photos in my inbox by end of business the same day. Worst case scenario, by end of business the next day. So you should be calibrated to that sort of service level. At least I think you should. You should be able to get a very prompt response. If you do go to the inspection, you can typically count on getting a debrief from the inspector who will call out the top 3 or 4 things, and he'll show you the photos on his camera and that kind of stuff. However, if you're not there, and the odds are you won't, because you'll be living a real life, one reason why you're involving a real estate agent in this is for them to deal with the junk so that you don't have to. You should expect a debrief the minute that the inspector leaves. Your agent should be on the phone with you or writing an email to you, giving you a summary of what the inspector found. And that's it. From there, things will be, and if it's a home inspection, it's simply going to be things called out. Then typically they'll say things like, just this is an issue you should take care of to prevent a future problem, right? More of a warning. And that's really the length of the categorization. They might call out something as a safety issue, and that's in general terms. Different, though, for the termite report. The termite report, and this is, again, a California thing. I'm guessing the same terminology exists in other states. But what they'll do is they'll call it Section 1 and Section 2. And simply think of those as the 2 categories of problems that are found by this report. Section 1 items are a problem right now. It's dry rot. It's active infestation with termites or other wood-destroying pests. Section 2 items are items that aren't causing a problem right now, but if allowed to continue, could become a problem later. Now, it's also important to point out that a termite report is not a termite clearance. Now, this is the reason I bring this up, and it's sort of in the same breath as a home inspection, is because while you may not see a home inspection in a transaction, if there's a lender involved, you will always see a termite report. Why? Because in order for your home to get its loan funded by the bank, they're going to want to see a Section 1 clearance relating to your termite report, right? So there's the termite report, there's the termite report clearance, and within the termite report, there's the Section 1 and Section 2 repairs listed out. Normally, in a typical conventional loan, all the Section 1 items must be repaired prior to close of escrow in order for the bank to fund your loan. In order for you to buy the house, the Section 1 items need to be done. So this can range from nothing, right? There was no Section 1 items in the condominium property that I recently sold. And also, I don't even think there were any Section 2 items. So there was nothing to worry about. So the price can range from the price to mitigate these Section 1 issues could be anything from $0. I think my worst ever Section 1 required repairs that I ever saw in all the time I've been doing this, since 1988, would be $27,000 worth of termite damage, where some things needed to be rebuilt because there was so much termite damage. So this is not something that's usually going to be a ridiculous surprise. You'd have to really neglect your property in order for this to be not noticed. Typically, the little dust, the wood dust that would accumulate at the bottom of the wall as termites eat it, would give you a clue that there's something going on. But yeah, it's all of those things, all the things that are a problem right now, and they need to be mitigated before the home will get funded by your lender. So that's primarily why I wanted to mention it. But also understand that just because you get the termite inspection done doesn't imply that it's a clearance. If you get a termite inspection that has no Section 1 items, you're good. You don't need to worry about it. Your Section 1 is clear with the first report. If the report says 0 Section 1 items, you send that to your lender and you're good. If there are Section 1 items and your lender is going to get a copy of your termite report, then you are going to need to arrange for the Section 1 items to be repaired. Here is an important point to remember. Who is going to pay for Section 1 items should be spelled out in the contract that you have already signed. I have no idea why so many agents submit offers without specifying who's going to be responsible for Section 1 stuff. What's particularly funny is most agents won't argue with you that a seller should be responsible for Section 1 repairs. However, if you don't already have this agreement in hand that says the seller is responsible for Section 1 item repairs, every agent is going to balk and start telling you, well, we'll pay half or we'll pay a quarter of it to help out the buyer. No, this should not be a mystery. And you know what? Your agent, if you are buying a home and it's in a rural area or it's at a certain age or there's certain levels of termite activity that just happen naturally where this home is, you need to slap your agent right in his big fat face if he doesn't put the rider on this to allocate who's going to pay for Section 1 items. It should absolutely be in there, and it should be spelled out so that if any Section 1 items are found, it's the seller's responsibility. So make sure that that's in there. You can write an addendum. If your state doesn't have a specific form, California actually has a specific form to allocate costs relating to termite inspections. You can add that. If for some bizarre reason your agent can't find that on the forms thing that we use, the online forms generator, then just create an addendum and just write it in there that the seller will be responsible for all Section 1 items. And here's the thing. This is what I find to be typical. Sellers think their home's fine. They don't think there's any termite issues at all. So odds are there's not going to be a second thought in their head about them saying, well, what's the worst case scenario? Maybe, a few $100, a couple of $1,000 tops. So that's what they're going to quantify in their head. But if you don't get this thing signed and they do find thousands of dollars worth of stuff, they're going to balk at the suggestion that they should be paying for that. If you've already got a signed agreement, they're on the hook for it, right? If they decide not to pay that or they refuse to pay that, then they're in breach of contract, right? Because they've already agreed to pay it. So that's the position you want yourself to be in as a buyer. As a seller, one way you avoid this possibility is you get the termite report done before you list your house. And again, given the circumstances I talked about a moment ago relating to the buyer, if it's in a rural area, homes of a certain age, termites tend to be active in this area anyway, I would strongly suggest that my seller gets a termite report. Okay, so there's all that. We've sort of given the long and the short of it here. Now, finally, believe it or not, we're actually going to talk about the 5 things that these folks think you should know about your home inspection. Before we do, we're going to take a really quick break. We'll be right back after this. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner-broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. And here we are. We're going to go ahead and jump in, I promise. Okay, 5 things you should know about home inspections. Number 1, you can choose your home inspector. Yeah. And that's true regardless, whether it's already been done or, you always have to remember that the person who these inspectors are beholden to are the one who pays for the inspection. However, I have yet... and whenever I feel like anything hinky is going on, I suggest my clients get their own inspection. But I have yet to ever be in a situation where I honestly feel like there's a high probability that I'm dealing with a hinky home inspection based on this idea that the seller got it and it's somehow slanted towards not finding as much stuff. Given what I mentioned before, I don't think there's an intentional desire, even when I find ones that I don't particularly trust. It's not typically because I think I'm being misled by the report. I just question the thoroughness of the inspector. So, and let me calibrate you guys to that too. A trend that is often a problem in real estate is that realtors want to find the road with the least bumps in it. And inspections that call out things are bumps, but they're important bumps, and you do not want to avoid them. If you get the inspection, you want it to be as thorough and honest as possible. It doesn't mean and because it's a home inspection, if it tells you, if you were already willing to buy this home as is and you really just want the home inspection as an informational thing, well, why not get all of the worst possible news you can so that you're at least aware of it? So get the home inspection. If you're going to do one anyway, make it thorough. Don't buy into some idea that you want to hire an inspector who's going to give you a relatively easy time in terms of thoroughness. You want them to be thorough. You want to make sure your agent understands you want them to be thorough. And the point I'm trying to make here is some agents like inspectors that aren't thorough because they don't want them saying things that might scare you. And frankly, part of a real estate agent's job is to mitigate all of that by explaining the realities and that every home inspection will reveal something bad. Everyone. Even my squeaky clean condo had a one call out relating to a slightly low flow in a sink upstairs. So we went upstairs, discovered that the knob that controls the flow of water from under the sink simply was halfway closed. So we turned it, and it was fine. But that is how nitpicky these things get. A little bit surprised that the home inspector didn't check the supply valve. Yeah, granted. But there will always be something. They'll always call out something like something very minor and insignificant. But that's obviously not necessarily why you're hiring them. You want to hear all the news, worst and best. Okay, home inspections are intended to point out adverse conditions, not cosmetic flaws. That is true. They tend to focus on issues or problems. Sometimes something that they're describing will sound cosmetic, when in reality what they're trying to reveal is, I am seeing a cosmetic thing that indicates to me there may have been a water leak here previously, right? Like painting over an area that might have had a leak at some point, that kind of thing. So normally when they're calling out something that feels just cosmetic to you, they're actually usually trying to draw attention to something else, or at least reveal the possibility of there being something else, just so that they're giving you full information. And of course, that assumes you've got a good inspector. I mean, and I tend to gravitate towards the guys that are thorough and give you that kind of information. Now, it's also important to note that home inspections that reveal lots of stuff shouldn't concern you necessarily. Sometimes you're just going to have it for informational purposes. Sometimes it'll be something that you're concerned enough about that you may ask the seller to remedy. During this time period where you're allowed to go out and do all the inspections you can, just remember that this is an opportunity for you to find out what's wrong with the home or things that may be an issue with the home, and decide whether or not you want to continue with the transaction and purchase the home at all, because you can back out of the deal during this time for any reason without losing your money. If you put down $10,000 as earnest money on this house, and you find something during the inspection process or something in the inspection or anything that you get done during this time period, you can back out of this transaction and not lose a dime. That is the point of having a designated period of time for you to do your inspections. The home inspector will point out conditions that need repair and or potential safety-related concerns relating to the home. They won't comment on cosmetic items if they don't impair the integrity of the home. They also don't do destructive testing, so they're not going to break open walls or do any of that kind of stuff. Number 3, home inspection reports include only the basics. This is very true. It's going to include the exterior, steps, porches, not always decks. If you've got a large deck in the back of the house, they're not going to crawl around under the deck unless you specifically tell the inspection company that the deck is included in the inspection. Chimneys are included, roof, windows, doors. Inside, they're going to look at the attics, the electrical components, plumbing, central heating, air conditioning, basement crawl spaces, garages, all that stuff. For you sellers out there, when it is time for this home to get inspected, you need to make sure there is nothing preventing the inspector from being able to do a close-up inspection of the walls in the garage. So if you have junk stacked up against the wall, they're going to put a note in that they were unable to inspect that area due to seller personal belongings being in the way. The termite guy will do the same thing. Do not let any of these inspections happen when the inspectors cannot get to these walls, because this just happened to me. A bank will come back and say, we need a re-inspection of the garage because these folks' boxes were in the way. That's the first time under those circumstances I've ever seen that happen. And also keep in mind that when I mentioned the Section 1 items in a termite thing before, that's pretty standard that's required by just about all conventional banks for you to get repaired. Understand that if you're dealing with a VA transaction, there is a chance that the VA folks will ask for some of the Section 2 things to be dealt with as well. And also understand that the VA inspection is it's a very different thing. And I would love to be able to give you a exact definition of what the VA inspector will and will not call out. But frankly, that is the one thing about the VA process that is the most difficult to pin down. You never know. I have had inspectors not call out something I would have sworn they were going to call out, and then I have had them call out things that completely confounded me as to how they thought that was important enough to call out as something that must be dealt with before they would loan on the property. So Just keep that in mind. And again, I am not suggesting in any way that you not go with VA. I'll be honest, 100% of my clients who have used VA have closed on their loans. 100%. That's a great statistic. So be willing to put up with a slightly different process relating to VA loans for two reasons. Because it's for a vet, and don't be a jerk. And two, because once you get past that hurdle, once that VA inspection is done, you are golden. I have never had a transaction not close once I've made it past that step. Have I had complications that I have to jump through some hoops to make things happen? Yeah, but that's my job. That's why I get paid. So it's not your problem as a seller, and it's not the buyer's problem as the buyer. It's the realtor's problem to jump through those hoops. Okay. Home inspectors work for the party who's paying the fee. That's always important to remember, but also it's important to remember that in most states, home inspectors, are also taking a legal risk if they're not doing their job right. Let's see. The NAHI Standards of Practice and Code of Ethics clearly state, that's the governing body of home inspectors, state that members act as an unbiased third party to the real estate transaction and, quote, will discharge the inspector's duties with integrity and fidelity to the client. A reputable home inspector will not conduct a home inspection or prepare a home inspection report if his or her fee is contingent on untruthful conclusions. The inspector should maintain client confidentiality and keep all report findings private unless required by court order. That means it is your choice whether or not to share the report with others. If you're a seller, you don't have to disclose the report to buyers, but you must disclose any failure in the system or integrity of your home. So I would throw out that last line. If you are a seller, particularly in my state, maybe this isn't true everywhere, but anything you know about a property, if you don't disclose it to the buyer, you are opening up a huge can of worms for yourself, because there's these seller property questionnaire and the transfer disclosure statement. Now the seller property questionnaire, which we normally refer to as the SPQ, not mandatory, but the TDS, the transfer disclosure statement, is. And if you learn about a defect relating to your property from a home inspection and then you don't reveal that on a transfer disclosure statement, you're in deep doo-doo. You've broken the law, and things will go badly for you if that is found out. So disclosure is better than not disclosure. It's just a question of how you disclose it and making sure that it's in a way that gives the information to the other party, but you can manage how that information goes out, which is one reason why I typically love for this to be information that's given to folks before they ever even write up the offer. It's great to give them a packet of what all's there, and then you're ready to go. Not always necessary, but in many transactions it will be a good choice. Finally, number 5 on their list: inspectors are not responsible for the condition of the home. That's kind of an interesting one to note. Quote, inspectors don't go behind walls or under flooring. Well, they do if they crawl under the house, then they can see the subfloor. So it's possible that a serious problem can be overlooked. This is absolutely true. Keep in mind that inspectors are not party to the sales transaction. So if you buy a home where an expensive problem surfaces after the sale, you won't be able to make the inspector liable or get the inspector to pay for the damage. In fact, you may not be entitled to any compensation beyond the cost of the inspection. The only time that would be true, and this is a big maybe, if somehow through gross negligence the inspector doesn't find something, I have to think that there's because I've seen it happen. I've seen these complaints occur where clearly it's something that should have been found. It was obvious. It was in a place that, according to their work order, they inspected and they didn't see it. Now, in the case when I had this happen, the inspection company simply came back and said, we'll pay to remedy the problem. So they came out, they remedied the problem themselves, and everything was fine. But if typically, if it's something that is not obvious, the home inspection firm is going to be off the hook for it. And then they go off to tout the wonders of how, as a buyer, you should make sure to do this. So absolutely, when you're buying a property, when you're spending this kind of money, absolutely you want to make sure that you are protecting your investment as much as possible. And the bottom line is, if you're smart about this, oftentimes you can get things taken care of during the escrow, and depending on what kind of market you're in, you can ask the seller you can come up with a list. So there's even a specific form for it in California where you can refer to the reports. Now, I always share the reports I get with the other party for a very specific reason. I just mentioned that the seller is required to disclose whatever they know. So I make sure that the sellers on the other side sign that they have received the home inspection and the termite inspection. So now they know everything that's in there. So if they were to try to get out of this transaction to go with another party in hopes that this error won't get found by the next party, they'll be breaking the law. Because I've verified with a piece of paper that they signed that they've gotten this thing and they know about these problems. So in other words, it's better for them to simply deal with the problems with me rather than take a gamble that the next party, won't notice it. So that way you're kind of keeping everything right in line with your still end goal of trying to keep as much power in the hands of your clients moving forward to reach the desired conclusion, which hopefully in this case is them owning the house. I don't think it's ever unreasonable to ask for stuff to get repaired. I usually try and casually probe that topic with the other party's agent to find out. If they're absolutely against it, that's one thing, and maybe that becomes a discussion. But normally I'll at least submit a request for repair of a variety of things, and right on the form, the seller can either agree to it or not agree to it. If they don't agree to it, then the ball's in your court. Do you want to back out of this deal? This is a big enough deal that you want out. Or do you want to go ahead and accept the home as is and move forward and close escrow? So that's kind of it. That's the Uber version, I guess, of what this article could be. Their 5 points really only covered about the last 10 minutes of the show. But that's a big overview. I hope that's been helpful for you. This is valuable for everybody. Whether you're a buyer, seller, investor, real estate entrepreneur, doesn't matter. These inspections should be a vital part of whatever you're doing relating to real estate because you inherit every problem that currently exists with that property once escrow closes. So isn't it better to know what you're potentially facing ahead of time rather than being surprised, or at least minimizing the surprise? You know, the other thing I've noticed, no matter how many inspections you get, no matter how well you do, you will always find something wrong once escrow closes. Typically not anything big. If you've done your job right and you've gotten inspections, all the really big stuff is going to get revealed. But you're going to find something, some goofy thing that's just some little thing that made it through the process. All right, folks. Thanks again for making the show a part of your daily routine. I am forever in your debt for sharing the word of the show. Clearly, that's what you've been doing. The number of subscribers and downloaders of the show has been dramatically increasing over the last week, and I absolutely attribute that to you, and I very much appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, everybody. I'll talk to you all next time.